Okay, looks like we're live. Men, I am super excited to come to you today. Welcome to Wisdom and Grit. This is Wisdom and Grit Live. I know that confuses a few people when I say that. They think we're going to be meeting up somewhere. What that means is we meet inside of the group with an awesome guest every single week. My goal with this show is to introduce to you the men who build the world and create lives of impact so that we can celebrate and their work together and fulfill the call of masculinity in our homes, our communities, and the world. Today's guest is a man who knows how to get hit hard and keep going. As an offensive lineman in the NFL, he has worn the armor for teams like the Detroit Lions, the Dallas Cowboys, the Miami Dolphins, and he's experienced what it looks like to live like a king. In 2010, his professional world was brought to a screeching halt with a career-ending injury, which spun him into the beginnings of an identity crisis. He may have other words for that. I don't know. That's what it seems like anyway. But his journey to redefine himself ultimately led him, defiantly, I'll add, to Jesus, where his identity no longer was found in who he was, but in who God says that he was. He is a proud husband and father. And one other thing that is probably the most impressive about our guest today is his majestic first name. Please welcome my friend, Cory Proctor.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. This is great.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. You know, it's funny because I always kind of pre-post all of the guests and stuff that are going to be in there with, kind of that image and just letting everybody know who's going to be on. And man, yours by far has had the most likes and comments and stuff, out of all of them. So I think no pressure, but I think the men are expecting something huge here today. So
No, that kind of sometimes it comes with the territory with the Cowboys and the NFL. And
yeah, man,
gotten some good stuff. I use it as a tool to be used, but I don't live in it. So
sure. Well, so the intro doesn't even give justice to your story as a whole, and I know there's a lot that we can dive into today. But why don't you kind of just give the guys a brief overview of who you are and kind of where you're at today and kind of how you got there, and then we'll move into the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot, right? I think for any guy, it's where do you start with that? I originally, I'm middle of three boys, grew up in Washington State. Different family dynamic. Kind of a mixed family. A lot of people have these days, and moved around a lot as a kid, which kind of caused me to really cling to my coaches as a boy. And I was a fat kid, man. I dove hard into that bag of Doritos. And even today, right? That's probably my biggest sin is gluttony right now. But
you're a big boy. You got to keep that belly full, man.
I stopped the force feeding when I stopped playing, but the appetite is still there.
Yeah. So
calories, I don't consume like a little girl. All right. This thing is a train. But anyway, after there, luckily, man, I got into a family with football, and that helped start developing me, which I really needed at the time, and ended up being pretty good. Found a gift, right? And so ended up going to college, earned a scholarship to the University of Montana. Loved it there. It was amazing. Went undrafted to the Detroit Lions and was on the practice squad most of my rookie year there. End of 2005, Bill Parcells picked me up with the Dallas Cowboys. And so I was there end of 05, 2006, 7, 8, 9 through the Wade Phillips coaching change. And Jason Garrett, who is our offensive coordinator, is there now. And with a lot of great guys. And then played with guys like Jason Witten and Romo. And when Romo took over for Bledsoe and Terrell Owens, Marion Barber, and a lot of great guys. Cool. But then that ended. They cut me in 2010. A week later, I signed with the Dolphins for the 2010 season, and actually ended up rupturing my patellar tendon in my left leg, which many of you guys don't know. Tendon runs runs through your kneecap down into the bottom portion of your leg up and connects up to your quad here, and that ended up on a short screen, alley screen play we had against Chicago on a Thursday night game. I was starting the center. I was going to block the Mike linebacker, which is Urlacher at the time, and over pursued him. So meaning I run, I take the wrong angle, right? And I run to go get the block, and he starts to run underneath me. I plant my left leg to come back, and that tendon ended up snapping my my kneecap in half.
Oh my God.
And
that sounds painful, dude.
That was it. And so
what does that feel like, by the way? I mean, if you can explain it, like other words, I don't even know.
I don't know how to explain it. That was the worst pain that I've ever experienced in my life, though. Physical pain.
Oh, I can imagine. Jeez.
It was, and actually it was enough to knock me out. So, I'm sitting there kind of wailing in my own mind, and our Kevin O'Neill, who was the head trainer at the time, all of a sudden I woke up to him slapping me in the head. He was like, "Brock, wake up," which is great. That's not concussion protocol anymore to slap somebody in the head to wake them up. But he slapped me in the head to wake up, and that's when I realized I couldn't use my left leg.
Oh man!
And that was essentially the end of my career. Now that wasn't that was my last play, and I fully expected to get back, but really, kind of what happened was an infection took place in my knee. One surgery turned to 5, and had an injury trying to get back in my tricep, and it was just kind of body was falling apart. I had a lot of surgeries. My price tag was too high for teams, and when they got younger, cheaper, healthier guys, they'll go use those options. So that was the end of my football career.
Wow.
And so that kind of led into, and I think we'll come revisit some of this stuff, but from there, gap in time, I got married right after that season, and which was amazing. It was funny because I'm started walking the week of our wedding, and it was really kind of a moment, where it's time for you to be a husband instead of a football player. But got married, had to get a real job, started with a beverage company at first in sales and loved it, but got to a point where I hated other people telling me how much I was worth.
Yeah.
Right?
Happens.
So led that mindset really came from my faith. We ended up getting involved in church and coming from some different places, but we had a big loss in our family, losing my nephew, and my younger brother Casey had lost his son. Him and his wife lost their son, and so we kind of took a big FU right towards God. Screw you, and that's it. And went working. So kind of a natural place I think a lot of us go, right, is that we'll take the world on our shoulders. And so we took that. And so anyways, we go to church, man, get rocked, and we'll revisit, I'm sure we'll get rocked. Change of faith, life change happens, perspective change happens. And all the way up till now, where I'm getting asked to speak at large men's conferences. I just got re-invited back to Men's Summit here at Gateway Church, where last year we had 4,000 guys.
That's awesome.
And speaking around the world. I got back from Israel just several months ago from a men's conference over there. Yeah, speaking to different corporations about their sales organizations and helping them develop, and then launching my own financial company, my own wealth management company. Pro Capital, and it's been wild because it's been a total spectrum shift in my life that has led to me seeing myself at a way higher value, and on top of it, as a result, seeing everybody else's value way more than they put on themselves or where other people want to control them with. And it's been powerful, man. I'm in an awesome place. We have my wife and my baby girl here in Texas. She's 4 years old. She's bigger than all the other kids.
Yeah, I can imagine coming from
I take her to the gym because I want her.
She's a Nephilim like you, man.
I tell people I want her strong enough to rip the balls off any dude that tries to rub up on her.
That's funny, bro. That's an intimidating statement. Hey, so you said something just a minute ago that's interesting, and I want to dive into. When you were talking about you started finding worth in yourself, and then you started seeing the worth in other people. Like, was that an issue for you? I didn't really know, but like throughout the NFL and all that.
That wasn't worth in myself. It wasn't like I had a mindset where I didn't feel like I was worthy of a position. Yeah. I always have have had a fighter's mindset, and that's kind of the conditioning that's taking place with athletes. Is they're used to going after goals, right? They're used to attacking objectives, and but we had never, because it was a good conditioning place. We had never dove into the value of an individual, very much, and your perspective towards yourself. I just hadn't dove into that kind of dialogue, and in my faith circles, and which all about that. We're part of some of those together.
Yeah,
you start talking about what does it mean to be a man, not just in society. How about in your own house? And what kind of gifts do you bring to the table to expand your territory, your domain, your influence in your home? And not just within these walls and these confines, but how does that expand outside into the community, into your circles, into your other places? What are you to the world?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was so cool because, I had, when I started the speaking engagements, I was taking everything. I was doing every free gig just because people were asking, and I was kind of a yes guy at first. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, which it has value, right?
Yeah.
But there was a point where it was dominating my life, and people were just eating up my time.
Yeah.
And I had mentors and pastors in my life that would speak into me, and they were like, and I actually had one speaking engagement at a church function where the pastor, he was like, look, I want to pay you, and I want to show you what you're worth. And it was substantial, right? And so I got that, and it started to change. Those voices started to change how I viewed myself, in a sense. And it was really kind of the basic mentality. What is the 95% of the people in the world? They put zero objectives. They put zero thought into what they're doing moving forward. They put zero thought into themselves. And so I was in that. Yeah. And so when he started speaking that into me, I started thinking in that sense. And I'm like, holy cow, okay, I'm worth way more than this. So I got tired of fighting for commissions changing every week at my sales job, which I know a lot of guys can relate to. And I got tired of other people telling me how much I was worth. And it even got to the point where I was in that sales job, and I told them, I go, look, my value, and I brought credible sources. I brought my numbers. I brought my execution, my levels compared to the rest of everybody on the team, and where I stood. I was number one for several years, and I brought that to the table. Said, hey, I had taken like a 32% decline in a 3-year period in take-home pay, and I said, look, I'm worth more than this, and I understand there's some different confounding elements in our business. I go, but I'm getting opportunities elsewhere because other people are seeing that and how I'm carrying myself. And job offers were coming, speaking engagements were coming. And I said, look, other people are seeing this, and you guys need to see this. And if you don't, that's okay. I go, but we need to make a choice. And I want to invite you guys in on that. And, they didn't see eye to eye with that. And that's okay. And I go, okay, well, we're going to have to find something else. And so I got away from that job and dove more into speaking and into my financial world, and ended up starting this other company, my wealth management company. And I'm like, man, I'm happier now with that, putting the onus on me to go execute myself and my family than leaning on some other person to finally recognize my worth.
100%, man. That's
a
huge awareness, man. No, that's good. The interesting thing about what you were saying is that conversation that you had to have with that employer at the time. I think that's a big thing for a lot of guys, because the ability to be able to have those tough conversations, I believe, correlates to our happiness and our effectiveness as men in this world. Like a lot of times I find that, I've seen it in myself before too. But having the willingness or the confidence or whatever it is to go and have those types of conversations will make an impact. in how we engage in our community and ultimately our happiness with how much money we're making, you know, or the impact that we have and all that. So was that hard for you to go and have that conversation initially?
No.
Yeah, that's good. No, I wonder, yeah, because I think a lot of guys could relate with that. So like, let's get inside of the head of that a little bit and like kind of what was your motivation behind it? Obviously it was money, but probably a lot more going on there. And then how do you think guys should be thinking when they need to have those conversations and they're not?
Well, there's got to be some real self-reflection, right?
Yeah.
I was with that company for 4 years. And believe it or not, I was the second longest tenured in that company at the time.
Wow.
And the number one, when I joined that sales group, I jumped up to number one salesman within 3 months. And so my account openings, my revenue brought to the table, my relationship with the customers, everything I was asked, and we had big turnover in our C-level executives, right? I had 4 different reports, had 2 different CEOs, so we had a lot of turnover, which is not good. And the same thing happened over and over again. And it was interesting because a lot of guys I'm sure can relate, but they would have a new guy would come in and implement the strategy and not talk with the people of the company at all.
Yeah.
And it was just like, here's my plan, which I appreciate. I want to have a plan. But there was zero depth involved and say, hey, Cory, all right, I'm new to this company. And I want to admit that I don't know every facet of this. And I want to get some history with you, what you've seen with the company, right? You've been a top performer or you've been this level for a while. Let's get some insight.
Yeah.
And that's huge. How big does that make you feel in the company already, just being asked that?
Right.
And so anyways, I kept going back to the original point was, when you got to reflect in on yourself what the situation is. Okay, how are you performing? One, it's a big way. I mean, are you somebody who's a big swinger, a big hitter at this company right now, or do you just want more money?
Yeah.
And on top of it, do you have evidence that you can bring? Have you been tracking that? You know, where are your numbers? Where are your spreadsheets? Where's anything that you come? I brought concrete numbers to the table, which brought validity to my conversation, my gripe, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have those things and you think you have a viable argument, you say you need to go in that and swing the bat and address it with respect, not being pissed off, not anything crazy,
right?
Because you have another man or leader or woman, whoever it is, on the other side of this table who has a life too.
Mm-hmm. Another human being,
right?
At the end of the day, I mean, that's what it is.
And you gotta fully recognize that before you approach this conversation, because if you come in with angst and emotion, you're going to get that back right away. So if any guys are, anybody guys, you guys have those situations. It can be a few different things that happen, right? One, you realize, okay, I have been a productive employee. I've been a producer here. I need to have a conversation. Let's see. Okay, let me gather my notes first about what I want to talk about. Do not go in there swinging. You're just unsure. And
know what you want, right? Have a desired outcome. Like, what does this look like? That's good.
And if you look structured in everything you're doing, and if you're not doing this yet, I posted about this yesterday. How many times have you been on a conference call where somebody's going through an item of note and they're like, man, there was one other thing I couldn't think of. Well, I'll think of it later. That doesn't look very good.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're a guy that has his notes in order, you just take 2 minutes before every call, and especially if it's an important conference call or anything, and you write down some notes really quick. You can bang through those things and look, this is what we need to work on. This is what's on my mind. This is this, and this. You look extremely professional and that turns into a great performance.
Well, you mentioned something on one of the calls that we've had before, just as buddies, but like you talked about water, going with the flow and how water it only goes downhill, right? And I was like, man, that was so profound. Like, expand on that a little bit.
So the thing, so many of us, especially as guys, we are, one of our biggest hurdles is passivity.
Mm-hmm.
How much we pour everything into our job. We come home, we unplug, grab a beer, we sit on the couch, we zone out.
Right.
You know, or we zone out into our work, whatever the case may be. But the problem with, and that causes us to go with the flow or to conform so many levels. And the problem with that is going with the flow. I've got all of a sudden somebody's trying to call into me right now. The problem with going with the flow is water never flows uphill.
Right.
Right.
Dude.
And we all want to get to the top. We all want to be successful, make more money, and have the most epic marriage with the most epic sex life and all these different things.
Yeah.
But if there's zero thought and effort and intentionality involved in it, you'll end up at the bottom real fast.
Yeah. And I've found myself there before. I mean, definitely what you were talking about is you're having a conversation and you just kind of become confident in your own ability to handle yourself in the conversation. But in preparation, I had that speaking gig today, you know, and you speak a lot. And we had talked about this a few days before because you were actually helping me kind of outline that a little bit. Thanks for that, by the way. But inside of that, man, I was realizing how important being prepared was. And even as much as I prepared, I didn't really feel 100% like I was going to knock it out of the park. Now, I ended up going in there and it was awesome. I mean, like they were all like really excited. Apparently, I got a text from the lady that invited me to speak and she was like, I loved it. Everybody there absolutely loved it. This was amazing. You know, so that preparation that I did on the front end, which is kind of counterintuitive to how I work a lot, you know, I'll kind of just, you know, respond to situations, you know, and that's what's gotten me through. But I know that's also what's holding me back in a lot of areas too. So I'm really working on trying to put systems in place and make sure that when I come to the table, it's with force and it's with fire. And I love what you said about that water, man, because water has the potential to be one of the most powerful forces on the planet, right? And it can be when it's going downhill, but like, who wants to go downhill and who wants to be a force on the way down, right? That's not what I want. But so,
well, and then if you get here's a visual aid, water's flowing downhill, but I want to be the guy with the bucket pouring. You know, I mean, it's who do you guys want? You want to be? We have to consume on a great level to grow, but on top of it, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if your cup's never overflowing and people aren't getting pieces of value from you at all different phases, we're not growing enough as men.
Right. So how do you recommend that then? Like, so, I mean, obviously I have my own thoughts on that, but when you talk about, you know, working from an overflowing cup, like how are you getting your cup to overflowing?
First, I wasn't always like that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like I was 14 years old and reading John Maxwell leadership books.
Yeah.
I go, what happened with me is I got involved in my faith. And it wasn't intentional. It was by someone else making an invite, which is powerful. If you don't even think about it, make an invitation to something. But we got invited to church, ended up having an experience that rocked my world and started to get around the faith and allowed me just to stay there and listen, right? And listen to sermons. And really, if you're faith-based, you realize it's in Romans, it talks about to gain faith, you have to be around the word of Christ. But really that value in that book in the Romans scripture is, what are you consuming, right? You will be what you consume. And you're somebody who, and I had a fire that turned on all of a sudden. And what had happened is, you know, if you're somebody that wants to be bigger and you want to expand your territory as a man, your domain, all right, you need to grow as a man. And it has to be on purpose. So what do we have to do? Read books like An Insane Man. And I even I've been looking at some, what the heck, fast reading classes. What are those called?
Oh, speed reading. Yeah.
Speed reading classes. I've been looking at some of those because I want to get that.
Dude, I'll introduce you to my buddy, Ron White. He's actually a world record holder and U.S. memory champion. He's got a speed reading course. So he's a memory guy too. So you might need some of that. But anyway, he's in the group too. I'll tag him on this video. So we'll get him.
Okay.
So.
So, but all of a sudden I started reading books like crazy and started attaching to some of my own values to those, right? And all of a sudden pieces of gold. One of my favorite first ones was the John Maxwell 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And, you know, I was going through that time with my sales company and I was like, man, this is pure, this is genius right here. And I'm like, my company could use this. And I had started managing the sales team at that time. And I implemented a ton of those values. And I started having those conversations like, you know, what do you think we can do better? What would help you? What tools do you need to execute on a higher level? What's going on in your life, right? What's your foundation in building that up? And I started consuming on a crazy level. And so that led to podcasts, that led to messages, that led to relationships. I'm like, man, I saw you as somewhere I wanted to be or similar or on that success level. I wanted to hear your story.
Yeah.
And so slowly the process started happening where the Netflix binging started disappearing. Any video games started disappearing because I wasn't doing it for a return, right? It was just purely enjoying.
Yeah.
And just being lazy. I became way more active in my time allotment. So it was for my family, and then it was for my work, and then it was for a side hustle, and then for any like, okay, how can I dive into more speaking engagements or opening this company, which is how that led to fruition. And all of a sudden, my desire, my want to changed. And it was really because it was the guys that were surrounding me changed.
Yeah.
And I all of a sudden.
Well, and the information that you were putting into you. I mean, it was that, but it was, all of that. So I 100% relate to that. That was a lot of my story as well. That's good, man.
Yeah.
That's good. So you kind of talk about, you know, the struggles and stuff that you encountered along the way. Obviously with your knee, the kneecap breaking, that sounds horrendous, by the way, but like, dude, when you're hit with something, I mean, did you grow up thinking you were going to play in the bigs, or was it kind of, I mean, or the NFL? I don't know if y'all call it bigs or whatever, but
no, you know, I didn't. It's always cool, right? I mean, I didn't think about that much, honestly, because I think of what the dynamic that we had at home and the split that was going on between my folks, and they both got remarried. And some of the stuff that was happening there distracted me, and really sports were a distraction from that. And so it was something that I could really pour heavy into, not even realizing at the time. But man, I grabbed on when you as a coach gave me a compliment, a positive reinforcement. I grabbed that like candy.
Interesting.
And it was just, then that might have been some of my circumstances at the time, but man, I grabbed that. And so I remember the first time a coach told me, he handed me the ball just to run on a drill. And it was in 7th grade, and kind of like an Oklahoma drill. And he gave me the ball. He's like, we just need a ball carrier. Somebody jump in at Proctor. So I'm this fat kid jumping in and carrying the ball for the first time. And I ran. I remember I just ran, and maybe I had some momentum because of my weight, but kind of knocked the kid back. And he gave me some reinforcement. And I'm like, holy cow. And so that next rep, I came back with some force.
Yeah.
I came back with like, I want some more of that. And so I trucked the guy. so now I'm running in with full effort and wrecking some shop. And so I just fed on that like crazy. And so that was big, but I never thought like I wanted, like NFL was cool. That would be awesome. And I saw other guys getting college letters. I started getting them sophomore year. And that's when coach sat me down and was like, you have some real potential. Yeah. And so it was cool, but I never had any idea like I was going to make it to the bigs. Honestly, I really did go with the flow at the time. But you know, God had bigger plans in store for me. And I think there's a good lesson in that, is that if there are some characteristics that you can hold on to, even if you're not identifying a specific place you're going, you will end up in a higher place just because of your work ethic, your ability to execute. And other people will see that.
So that time when you were in the 7th grade, when your coach kind of called that out and you had that opportunity to plow that kid, was that kind of a defining moment for you? Like a wake up, like I was what? Because what I find interesting about that is I had a similar story in Krav Maga. So Krav Maga is like the Israeli hand-to-hand combat, and this wasn't that long ago. This was only a few years back, but I think it's like in society, specifically among men, this aggression that we carry inside of us a lot of times is kind of put on the back burner, and we're told not to engage in those things, and that's barbarian and this and that. And I've never really cared too much about that, but I also felt like there was probably a part of me that was not quite unleashed yet. And so I started training in Krav Maga, and in Krav Maga, it's all about just seek and destroy. It's like they don't even compete because it's just so definitive. I mean, you're just out to like take the person's weapon from them, use it on them, and then get out of Dodge, And I love the concept of that. But one of the exercises that we were told to do is like the guy, he had us take these belts, like kind of like the black belt or whatever else, but we would use that, and you'd have somebody behind you holding on to that belt while it was wrapped around your waist. And what you had to do was you had your shoes off, so you're kind of slipping a bit on the mat, but there was this long mat and it's going off to this body bag. And your goal was to switch in your mind to get to that bag and beat the living shit out of it. Just go all in, and I'm like, at first I'm like, okay. And you got this dude that's pulling on you that's at least your size, right? That's like yanking you back, and you're barely able to get up there. So you're fighting to get over there, but you've got this intensity because your job is in this certain time frame to get up to that bag and beat the crap out of it, right? And I finally got up there, and I'm sitting up there, and it's like, man, for 2 minutes straight, you're just waylaying on this bag while this other dude's trying to pull you away from it. And something clicked in me, man. Like when that happened, it just was like, this was awesome. It was like this first time that I had full permission to just completely unleash every bit of rage and aggression that I had inside of me at a single thing. And it was like being pulled from all angles. And I've never gone back to my original, to any of that other way. It literally broke something off inside of me that I was like, dude, this was awesome. Every man should experience that to some degree. And it sounds like you had a similar experience there.
Exactly. And that's a great lesson for any guy listening is a lot of guys have not had that even.
Yeah.
A lot of guys have not raised in a sports atmosphere or even an atmosphere where they could let that aggression, that natural aggression take place in any form. And
in a controlled area, really.
Right. What do we talk? You got to play nice. You got to do all these different things. And I remember my baby girl started punching for the first time. And then I told my wife, Megan, I'm like, I'm going to get her a Bobo the Clown so she can hit it. And she hated it. Cool. She flopped that idea. So I'm like, all right, I'll just let her hit me. And I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
But
the other Bobo, right?
Yeah.
That's funny.
There's an aggression side. In both sexes, but especially men, that we have to have. There's a reason we're born stronger, physically more dominant, and we all have our predispositions, but as a collective, there's a reason we have that, and it's a protective element, right? It's a leadership element, right? It's to establish dominance when it needs to be established, and it's a tool to be wielded when it needs, and not at a reckless level. And so that's important because when you get a taste of that, right? Now you see it. Now we can identify it, and now we can start molding it.
Yeah.
And that's critical for so many guys, because in that moment for me, it was like all of a sudden I hit somebody and he applauded that, my coach.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy cow. So next time I come back and hit harder, and all of a sudden to the point where I'm playing in the NFL, and I know how to blow a dude up.
Yeah. That's amazing, man.
It's powerful because you can take that, and I know football is not boxing, it's not Krav Maga. There's elements of every sport that are important. Yeah. But I know if there's somebody grabs my daughter, I can take off sprinting after him and he will die. And I will do everything in my power. And a lot of people, I think it's funny, I had this thought the other day, they're like, man, I don't know how I would act in that situation. And I go, listen, I can't predict the future, but I can guarantee what my snap response will be.
Yeah.
And I have a pre-choice made that if something happens like that, I'm gone.
Yeah.
You know, I'm looking to hurt somebody, right? Because that's when our protective place needs to activate on purpose. And and here's a critical thing for any married guy out there right now. Your wife needs to see that on purpose.
She needs to what?
She needs to see that.
Oh yeah.
She needs to see that because we are supposed to be protectors of our household and our family. She needs to see that, and that is some people call it animalistic, whatever you want to call it, but she needs to see that because that provides security to her. It's a turn on, right? If anything, I go, but she needs to see that because that will give her so much more confidence and respect to you to see you assert dominance in a big way.
Well, the interesting thing is because there's been a discussion going on inside of the group here about Fight Club. You ever seen that movie?
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah. No, it's a great movie. It's my favorite, like one of my favorites, actually. So one of the guys, he was kind of talking about like what is the meaning behind it, and we got into like there was a big discussion kind of centered around that, which I appreciate because I love that movie first and foremost, and there's a lot of really interesting concepts going on inside of that movie. I thought it was a brilliant film overall, and a lot of people were talking about the different aspects of it was like the degrading of masculinity and culture, and so that was where they kind of came back to form in this aggression, and they found themselves inside of aggression, and I think there's a lot of truth to that, and there's a lot more to it, obviously, inside of that. But one of my favorite parts of that movie was whenever, I don't know if you recall, but like they go into this gas station in the middle of the night, and Tyler Durden and the other dude, and they walk up and they grab the guy who's behind the counter, and he's this Indian dude, and they take him out to the back alley, and they put a gun up to his head, and he's like freaking out. Like he's like, please don't kill me. Please, please, And like, it's just, the scene is perfect, right? It's dark outside, and you're out there in front of this crappy gas station, and all this. And then you got the guy, he pulls out the gun and puts it to his head, and he pulls out his driver's license and whatever his name was. And he's like, I know where you live now. And like, he goes, what did you want to do when you were a kid? And he goes, you couldn't have wanted to be a gas station attendant at this crappy gas station, and he's like, I wanted to be a doctor. He was like, basically, he gave him the ultimatum. He's like, you got 6 months to go and become a doctor, or I'm going to come back and shoot you in the head in front of your family. And then, I mean, dude, but the moment of that was so profound to me because like the guy gets up and he's like stumbling away, and I think they even kicked him in his butt on the way out, but it was just like this total, like, that guy had no choice but to go be successful. Like, he didn't have any other way. He was going to die if he didn't go and do what he did, right? And I was like, man, I kind of want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that holds the gun to dudes' heads for other men, because like they get so locked in. Like that dude would have continued working at that gas station for the rest of his life had something that drastic not come along and incentivized him to do what he knew was supposed to be the case anyway. It's so profound, man. A lot of this, what we're talking about, I think about because, dude, when you're playing in the NFL or, doing anything at a high level, there's an obvious mindset that goes on inside of that. And we kind of touched on that a little bit, but like, what are some things that have really stood out to you about how to become that kind of person, right? What does it take to play at that level? And for a guy who's not ever going to see the NFL, or maybe I don't even watch sports, so for me, that's not even a thing, but I believe that I have that mindset in a lot of areas, but how do you recognize it and then weaponize that?
To climb the ladder, essentially. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, to get crap done, man. To go in there and do whatever it takes to play at those levels. I mean, that's pretty rare.
You have to, and it depends where a guy is in his life, right? So number one, you got to understand it's a process. It's never going to be an overnight thing.
Yeah.
Something eventually has to click in a guy's life where he's not where he wants to be.
Right.
Okay.
So you think that's the primary driver for guys in the NFL?
I'm just thinking in generalities, right? For guys listening to this right now, but in the NFL, like, look, I knew, dressed out by my coaches at the time, I knew weight room was important. I knew off-season conditioning was important. I knew busting your hump, especially in high school.
Yeah.
Every coach loves an effort guy, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point, that effort, that high effort, it'll get you to up here forever. I love guys with good work ethic. But at some point, that effort, because it's a conditioned aspect, when you get that conditioning level, that effort has to click over to performance.
Right.
So effort can get you a level of performance, which is great. But all of a sudden, if your mind doesn't click over to this point where I'm analyzing and I'm working very specifically in my steps, you'll cap out it so far.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in the NFL, like I knew, okay, I loved off-season running and lifting weights. For some reason, I love that stuff. And so I was addicted to it. I was involved. So coaches loved me off the get-go right away. So that's a big deal, right? So if you're in your organization or making it in the NFL, or you're trying to aim big for something, and I was a kid, right? I'm not getting paid.
Right.
So take that perspective to a degree, that childlike faith to a degree, where if I go in and bring a stupid amount of effort and value to my current situation without having an expectation back of anything at first, it will come. Right? It'll get returned to you on a big level. Your coaches will see it, your boss will see it, your wife will see it, whatever the case may be. They'll see that change and that value brought to it, and you'll start changing the environment around you.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I would start there because totally frank, we have a whole lot of weak people in this world.
Oh yeah.
And we have a lot of people that have zero idea what hard work really looks like. And they sit on the couch, they analyze all day, and they don't know how to actually go out and do it.
Right.
And so that's the first hump that's bigger than ever. And then when you can come back and like, okay, now I've given this sick effort. I've opened up a ton of accounts. I've been a performer for you in the NFL, right? I've made all these tackles, these blocks, whatever the case may be. I've been a consistent starter, made the Pro Bowl. I can come back with negotiating pieces. Now I can come to you and say, like, all right, how do we make this better?
Right.
And now tactically, we can move forward and be like, okay, XYZ, these are your hit lists. This is your hit list. This is your points. Like I can execute on these for us. And this is where I shared with some guys in high school. Some guys, we got some great high effort guys in high school that know how to, might be playing defensive end. And they're like, man, I know I'm gonna just run hard upfield, but if we run a draw or a running back middle screen, I'm out of the play completely and my effort is for nothing. Right? Yeah. But if I start thinking like, okay, now I got to get back to my tactical analyzation here. And okay, I know this tackle. I know this. I'm rushing upfield, but I'm like, I give my effort, but I know this tackle likes to lean outside. So I'm going to give those first 4 or 5 steps hard upfield to get him leaning on that outside leg. And I'm going to try to shuck him by to get him off balance, to throw him off so I can get a clear shot to the quarterback or the running back. And I'm still in control to make a play.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I see the effort guys. You'll have some guys that will work 50 years at a job at the convenience station and wonder where the rest of their life went.
Yeah.
And they've knocked it out of the park effort wise and work wise and time wise. But at some point it's got to click over. It's like, okay, I've worked 10 hours today. What came out of that?
Right.
What kind of production came out?
That's super interesting. You had made a point or a point early, little earlier back, but you were talking about they're sitting on the couch eating Doritos, not knowing how to move forward. And I really think that, is it that they don't know? I think it's that they think they don't know. But one of the things that I've been really kind of uncovering as I've been, on this journey to kind of hit new levels in my own life and kind of take next steps is that what's interesting is, like, I think we actually do know. A lot of times, like, we know exactly what to do. It's already in us. We just need somebody to either come alongside us and agree with us and help kind of bring it out, or we just need to freaking do it. And we've been so actively not doing what we knew that we needed to do that we just don't even have it in us anymore because we just have so much self-doubt and all that stuff as a result of not having taken the steps to get to that level. And when you were talking about just adding that value first, just constantly, man, just going out there and doing whatever it takes, like go out there, establishing your mission. What the heck are you even trying to do in the first place, to get there? And then just go in that general direction. You're going to make mistakes and go in all in. Like, why would you even be there doing it in the first place if you're not just going to do it all in, right? And then I think, like you were talking about, then you can start sitting down with some of those people who are going to help refine it. Those people will come to you naturally as a result of seeing you having done the work.
Right.
Because there's so many people out there that, it's like, dude, they're not doing the work, and then they're looking around for somebody to help them and help them and help them, and they don't do the work and they don't do the work. And eventually, like, dude, nobody's going to help you get to that next level because you're not even doing it. And they're like, they can't do the work for you. You're like dead weight. So it's like, I know you need to get out of that. You want out of that, but I got a family to support and everything else. So you're really just a pain in the ass, to be frank. So, go figure it out, go man up, go grow up, whatever it is, and come back and see me,
Well, and I think that brings up an important point, because we don't identify, and it might seem so minimal, so minuscule, but we don't identify where we are currently at so many times. And really, we end up in our current place from three things. And that's one, by choice. All right. We've chose to be where we're at. And this collective of those choices has gotten us here. One, two, it's environment, right? So people are surrounding us. Maybe it's just kind of that's what we grew up with, right?
Yeah.
And the third one is generational. So, maybe you have a predisposition to alcoholism because your dad and your grandpa have always been alcoholics.
Right.
Those can last up to 3 to 4 generations in a timeline. And if you realize that, you're like, okay, why do I do these things? Is it a generational issue? Yes, there's choice involved in it. Is it part of my environment, right? I'm like, okay, do I come home and Netflix binge every single night after work? I'm like, is that what your dad did every single? Because I know a lot of old guys that just came home and sat in front of the tube the rest of their life, right?
Sure.
Is that, am I struggling with a lust issue or something that's demeaning me and other people around me? I'm like, well, was that generational? Did my dad have those issues, or are those guys around me doing that?
Yeah.
I'm like, is that group that just to sit there and like stares at TNA all day long, right? Mm-hmm. And that's it, and go to strip clubs, or is it completely my choices? So when you start identifying those factors and why you're behaving or why you're where you're at, you can see that. So it's exposed. Okay. Yeah. Now the next step is to speak to it. So is that where you want to be? Right? And that's not where you want to be. And I want to be next level. So this is, I can't stand, something gets under my skin big time when people blame government and they blame politics or they blame rich people, for preying on the poor people. And I'm not saying there's not bad hearts in some of those areas.
Totally. Yeah.
What I'm telling you is, like, your current situation you can speak to and you can get out of right now.
Yeah.
You have an ability to 10x your income, to 10x your relationships, and to 10x the people you get around by changing all of that, by grabbing a book, getting out, having a conversation with a guy that has an insane testimony. Right?
Totally. Take personal responsibility.
And just taking a step of faith out in that. And I promise you're going to want to go right back to where you're at. Okay. So many people do. But if you stay on that steady path out, all of a sudden your world will start expanding and people will see that. And this is why we're having this conversation right now. You and I met at a big pitch meeting, right?
Yeah.
For a big, they're asking for big investments in a company. It's where you and I met and started having conversations, and all of a sudden, there was something we saw in each other.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, hey, I want your money, I want to sell you something. This is like, holy cow, each of us saw, like, this guy's got some fire in him.
Yeah.
Speaking
of Kyle Draper's on here, he said, my dudes.
Draper. Come on, baby. Another guy who's got that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, that's so good, man. One of the guys, as you were talking, Christopher Hubner, he got on here and he said, how do we start something and stay motivated throughout? Do you have any pointers on that? I mean, you kind of touched on it, but like, if you got anything.
Write it down.
Write what down?
Write it down.
What you want? Okay.
Right? Because here's the thing: we're all gonna have this peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
All of us at all times, right? So, what do you write it down? And so know this, all right? Our peak, and this might be different for guys. We have night owls and we have some, morning stars, but typically peak times in our days are in the morning hours.
Right.
If you know that for most guys, or when your best production time is, center your time around that. Center what you want to get done around those times. So you're like, how do you stay motivated? You stay involved with it. Keep the goal. Like you plaster it. We talk about putting it on the tablet big enough for the runner to see so anybody can see. So accountability can be had. All right. And you write it down every single day. And I like, even though this is what happens. I get this too, because I still have Netflix shows that I like. But this happens at night where you're looking over your wife, or maybe you're single and you're by yourself and you're like, man, and the thought creeps into your head, I should read that book too. I've been meaning to do that.
Yeah.
That's the critical time. It's because that thought is right there, because now you got a little bit of a divine thought. You're like, I have an opportunity for growth, or I have an opportunity to do zero and expand my kingdom, none. And so like, all right, you know what? It needs to be a shake off moment. In those moments where you're like, all right, screw this. I need to grab this book. And all of a sudden you crack open this book and you find a piece of gold that I guarantee you this happens to me daily. I'll read and that piece of gold I found in the book will bring value to the conversation I have with somebody else.
Oh, yeah, totally, bro. Yeah.
Right? 100%. I mean, you see it. And so what happens? Now I've brought that to you, and now I'm front of your mind somehow. And so you go off in your other conversations. You're like, man, thinking about that thing we said, or man, you need to talk to my boy Cory, because like straight fire. And all that is consumption. I'm consuming fire. So all of a sudden I'm spilling out fire, and people recognize that, man. So that's the motivation, is write it down. What are you going after?
Every day.
Right now we need our recharge. We need our sleep. That's important. But is your activity right now, is that driving you closer to it?
That's so good, man. So I want to switch gears here real quick, because we got a little bit of time, not very much time left or whatever else. So you've been you started up your company. You're going into, the wealth development and kind of working with people to help kind of take it to the next level. What, let's see, I guess, like, what should men be thinking from that wealth mindset about developing wealth in their own lives? And, I don't think it's ever too early. And to that point, I'd say it's never too late, but the reality is it could be to some degree. But like, I don't think it ever is really too late, because any is better than none. But let's go down that alley a little bit. And, what do you think guys need to be kind of focusing on in that world?
Well, first off, Colonel Sanders started KFC at 80 years old, 70 years old. So started this Johnny franchise at that latest
Not
stage.
really too late. Yeah.
So, give your perspective on that. But,
sure.
Big thing, the reason I went down this wealth route was because I hated that I didn't know what was going on in my own financial life.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's just, it eats you up a little bit, right? And you might hand it off to your wife. You're like, hey, you just handle that so I can go take care of business. Okay, that's cool. But in reality, you better have some idea or scope of what's happening in your financial world.
Right.
And that's I can tell you, so many people, they don't even know what their income outflow is, their cash flow analysis is in their own home. And they don't know what their output is. So, okay, if you don't audit your life, you don't understand what that is. And so I dove into that hard. And so the stuff that I started getting from it was like, holy cow, I started auditing my home and realizing, I can change my electric bill, and I reduced it by 40% by changing providers because I was on something that was just pretty bogus.
Wow.
And I got rid of scrap that we weren't using. And I partnered with my wife to do that. And so it started there. Then it went into my investments from money that I had when I was playing, and wanted to know why that was doing so well, because I had an advisor that was killing it for me.
Okay.
And so I was just letting that compound and grow. So all of a sudden my net worth there was awesome.
Yeah.
And so I started diving into those and understand there's some basic mindsets, that we as a whole need to get away from. And this is, I posted one this morning from a podcast that I've been listening to. Was so great. Was what's your wealth mindset? Like, what are you trying to be? Your goal? You want to be a millionaire 10 years from now, or 5 years from now, or make $100,000, or whatever the case may be? Okay, map it out. But we need to change our perspective to invest first and spend second.
Right.
And so what that does is, so now if I'm changing my mindset to that, now when I go to Costco and I see something cool, or go to the Apple store and I see something cool, like the new black AirPods that are coming out, right? I'm like, all right, those are cool, but do I need that $300 spend, or could I put that $300 into something with some? I'm looking for some capital growth, or do a value fund where I can let that grow for 10 years and let that thing compound and turn it into something legit. I got a buddy of mine who's a value investor, hedge fund guy, and he told me, he goes, man, I broke my numbers down for the last 35 years.
Wow.
35 years. Okay. This is how technical these guys get and the success level that people make it to. He goes, I broke it down 35 years ago. He goes, if you put, I gotta remember this right. If you would have put $10,000 in 35 years ago, no, excuse me, it was 65 years. You put 65 years ago, you put $10,000 in to what I'm doing right now, based on my performance, it would be worth 65 million or 35 million today.
Dang.
Okay. I'm off on those numbers a little bit, but it was a giant number. I think it was 35 and 65. So it was compounded interest. It was 35 years, 65 million. And it was just, now, disclaimer, past results don't predict future. Okay. But
so you're saying if somebody invests $10,000 with you, you're going to make them 35 million?
No, I'm not saying that.
Messing with it. You're making a promise right here on live. No, I'm just all right.
But what I'm saying is, like, these guys have different mindsets.
Right.
And absolutely, they go with the market where the market crashes like crazy, like 2008, or even fourth quarter this past year in 18, where we just saw huge dips, right? And you go through those, but you weather those storms no problem, because you get through them. And so these guys, their mindsets, if your mindset is always investment and always like, I will find the win in what I'm doing, you weather any storm.
That's powerful, man. Like, real quick, I want to, like, because we're running on the time here, but this Jeff Bruce, he just had a comment here, and he said, speaking of money mindset, do you think, let's see, you might think this is funny, but as a believer, I had this subconscious idea that having too much money is somehow wrong. Not like I had a lot, but I bet I'm not alone. Have you seen that amongst, like, the believers a lot of times, just that kind of that more scarcity mindset?
Yeah, I've seen that with guys. I've seen that with some believers, that it's like, it's bad to have money. Right? Yeah. It's like, you must be hoarding it all. That's not the case at all. Right. That's not at all. Because, like, the same thing happens to whom is given, to much as required. Right. So in the same respect, if I'm, if you're talking about a believer's mindset, if I'm making $10 million in a year and I'm tithing $1 million, but I also have capacity to give above and beyond that, or give to local charities, or give like crazy, or start my own foundation, or do whatever. Right. You have such a powerful reach with that. And
Yeah.
if you can't, and that's the thing is if you have a scarcity mindset like that, you're like, too much is too bad. Well, give me more.
Right.
You know, I pray for God to make me as big as possible so other people around me raise to the same level. And I can call to them, and I can make everything in my community bigger.
That's so good, man. Like, that is a big thing. I've noticed it a lot with, especially in the Christian world, but just in general with people's mindsets. It's they like you got Ocasio-Cortez up there in Washington talking about taxing all the wealthy until they can't move anymore, and then you got like, I mean, it's just stupid. Like the mindsets that exist around that, and it's like fair share, fair share. We went to the park the other day, and there was this something about what's fair for all or something on this wood part. And I took a picture of it because I'm going to do a post on that whole thing. It's like, that word now enrages me every time I see it, that fair, you know, because I know where people are coming at it from. And it's this mindset. You want to talk about toxic? Like that's a toxic mindset, right? Where we get into thinking that people shouldn't be wealthy or that we shouldn't be wealthy. And it's like, when was the last time that you saw somebody who was broke be able to build a school, you know, right, or to be able to go drill wells in Africa, to do all those things? And yeah, they can go out and they can do things, and that's more self-gratifying to the people who are there, as far as like they're broke and they feel like they're doing that and that they're living some kind of transcendent cause by being broke. And I'm not saying, hey, what do I know? God may have called them to that, but it is interesting that people grab onto that and they think that's more godly than believing God's word, where he says he'll give us abundance, right? And that he created this world for us and to have dominion over and to go out and be authorities on this earth, you know? And so I think that's an important thing for people to start retraining their mind. And that comes from, Jeff, this for you, but I know there's a lot of guys in that space that believe, you know, in certain ways. So you've got to retrain your mind to start seeing life a different way. Because at the end of the day, just because you know something doesn't make it right. And whatever your preacher may be teaching or whatever else, like, look, they're up there asking for money on Sundays because they know it takes money to make the world go around. And so if they didn't believe that, and some churches, they don't do that, and they have almost zero impact. So it's a matter of understanding the healthy relationship around money. So.
Well, I'll tell you, look, I used to be one of those guys that would look at a Joel Osteen, right, or some of these big churches that we have in the Bible Belt in Dallas, right? It's in the South. I used to be a guy that would look at that, and I would get judgmental. I said, like, what do they need all that money for? They're taking advantage and this and that. And that perspective has changed then too, because in the same way, there are unbelievers for sure who gain the fruit of biblical values. And what I mean by that, if you steward your money correctly and in the right way, you invest it in the right places. And I'm not just talking about securities, stock market, or anything. I'm talking about people. Right? You invest it correctly, it will come back to you tenfold. So you see the growth from some of these churches that are taking place. So they've invested, and so you can talk about, all right, believers, people coming to salvation. You can talk about marriages restored. There are these huge churches we have in the Metroplex that have full programs for families to get healed. Right. For you to fix your financial situation. Do you have an understanding of what your portfolio looks like, or what your financial picture in your life looks like? They have an idea of what the dynamic of a husband and wife is supposed to be in the family unit, and how you're supposed to act in those roles and embrace that and empower that. Yeah. And all of a sudden, they're pouring their values into that. And you think about this for a minute, okay? If you want to model your business after anything, all right, barring belief aside, what kind of a corporation can get you to buy into a situation, give your time, and give 10% of your money? That has to bring an enormous amount of value to you for you to be able to take that step.
Yeah.
And so I've seen guys. It's huge. So I would look at that, and so now I look at a Joel Osteen or these other churches where, like, how many people have they impacted, man? Yeah. You know, not because you're taking this very like they don't deserve this, they're abusing things, and they very well could be. I don't know. I'm not in their life.
Right.
I think of like, holy cow, how many people have not committed suicide because they heard this guy's message, right? Or because they got involved in the faith, or they got involved in a place that gave them practical knowledge and application to make their life better.
Yep, that's 100%, man.
That's where your value will get returned tenfold. And I would take that approach. Like, dang, when you start seeing that and calling those gifts out in somebody, I'm telling you, people will remember you different in their mind.
Well, and the interesting thing is, it's not even, so a lot of the people that are living broke, they're massively in debt. So it's not like they're not spending the money. What they're doing is they're enslaving themselves. And now you're paying back whatever it is that you bought at a massive rate, paying it back, and you're a slave. You're a modern day slave, and that is definitely not a good way to look at it. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, man, it's about recognizing it, speaking truth into it, and putting the axe down on the root and doing what you have to do to get yourself to that place. So I appreciate you diving into that, man. That's powerful.
It's good, man. It is 100% a mindset perspective shift, because only then, when you get that shift, that mindset shift perspective right one, is when you can dive down into the weeds and the details and really start eating away at what problems you've had, what issues that you need to expose so that you can fix them in the right way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was really good. Well, dude, I appreciate your time today. This was an awesome interview, and getting to hang out with you all the time. It's always, every time we do it, man, it's always a blessing. So, man, I appreciate all your wisdom and your grit, man, and getting out there into the world. If you had like one piece of wisdom that you want these men to walk away from, what would that be? I just put you on the spot like that.
You're good. I'd say elevate the man in life. Elevate the people in your life. Right?
Yeah.
You're not there. Hang out with people that are.
That's really good. Well, Cory, thanks again, man. Let them know where they can find you. They can find out more about what you're doing.
Sure. You guys check out my stuff. My speaking is at CoryProctor.com. My company, wealth management company, is Pro Capital. That's ProCapitalTX.com. That's under work right now, so you won't see anything there. But I'll be making some more announcements shortly. Follow my Twitter, Instagram. Hook me up on LinkedIn if you guys want. At Cory Proctor, or Facebook is at Cory Proctor Official. Go follow me, and I'm always posting stuff on there. But love to interact with everybody.
You're the man. All right, guys. I hope that today's interview helped you guys. That you took away some valuable lessons that will be able to make an impact in your life, that have challenged you to think a different way. And again, whether or not you're a Christian, we talk about a lot of that inside of Wisdom and Grit, but you don't have to be a Christian to be in this group. What I really want to come of all of this is that you at least hear what we're talking about, that you can make intelligent decisions on your own without becoming offended or becoming triggered or anything like that. And then as men, because I believe that's what our job is as men, is to be able to have tough conversations about things that are important, right, in the world, and that challenge us to think and see things in a different way. And there's always something to be learned from everything. And what most people miss is even in the small things is sometimes where you can learn the greatest things. So don't ever be too proud or too set in your ways that you miss an opportunity to take things away that can change the rest of your life. Love you guys. Appreciate y'all being in the group. And thank you for being here today and being a part of this interview, guys. So have a great day.